I'm Shelley Lyle.
And I'm Jessica Francis.
And welcome to Voices from the Field, a podcast brought to you by the Department of Sport Management at the University of Florida. This podcast was created to share the career journeys of sport industry professionals. Our hope is that you learn the ins and outs of different sport industry professions. We are excited to be with all of you this week and with our special guest, Samantha Rubin, General Manager of the Madison Mallards.
Sam serves as the first female general manager in Mallards history. She got her start right here at the University of Florida, where she earned her undergraduate degree in sports management. She worked as a game day ambassador while at UF and built a career in sports, working in various areas, including sales and marketing. In a short time with the Madison Mallards, she moved from being the assistant general manager to being the general manager. And they recently started a new Madison softball team that she is also the GM for. We are so thrilled and excited to have her on the podcast with us today. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to hear about just how you got started and would love to know a little bit more about your career journey and when you really knew you wanted to work in sports.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up an athlete. I played all the sports. I kind of narrowed into basketball and softball in high school. I was actually on the rowing team at Florida as well when I got here. When I got there, I guess. So that was pretty cool. And so from the start, I knew I wanted to work in sports. I didn't know what that really meant, but I knew that I wanted some sort of sports capacity in my life somehow. And so in high school, I was actually working with our athletic trainer. And so I would shadow him. He was actually a Florida alumni as well. And so he was really gracious to let me go with him to all the away games and learn how to tape and learn how to evaluate and do all the things there. And so when I got to UF, I had actually declared athletic training as my major. And so I was excited to kind of go down that path, also an HHP major as well. And so I was excited to be in that college. That was one of the things I really liked about athletic training was it was in the College of Health and Human Performance, which I really enjoyed. And pretty quickly realized that Bio 1 and Chem 1 were not my favorite things to do. And so I knew I wanted to stick in the college. And so because of that, I wanted to change my major and looked at sport management as a very broad major that I didn't really know what it meant at the time, but it was still an HHP. That was a big thing for me. I loved my advisors. I loved all the people. I loved all the professors there. And so I switched to sport management, just not really knowing what that was. Was really lucky that I actually heard from my former boss, who was a game day ambassador lead there. Her name was Jen Rubin, and she actually came into a class and spoke about the game day ambassadors or Gator guest services. And so I got super intrigued by that. I liked the game day idea of getting experience working football games at the stadium and working basketball games and all of the different sports, and applied and got into that. Jen left after my first year, and then Joe, who he still oversees the ambassadors, him and I became super close, but I just fell in love with that game day atmosphere. It was so fun. I mean, everyone loves game days at the Swamp, at the basketball, and we got to do softball and soccer and lacrosse and all of the different sports all around the university, which was really cool. And I was excited to do that. And as most people know, I think this is still the case, at least, your last semester has to be a full-time internship. Is that still a thing?
Oh, yes.
Okay, cool. So that's how I got my job.
She knows.
Yeah. So last semester has to be the full-time internship. And because I was a rower, I didn't want that to be in the spring. So I pushed that back and I picked up a minor and delayed my internship to be in the summertime and the summer semester. And so I had known that because of the experience I had gotten at GGS or guest services, I wanted something in season. I wanted to get that game day experience. And as everyone knows, when you do something in the summertime, that's baseball. That's pretty much all you have. And so I applied to whatever minor league baseball, major league baseball, didn't care, just applied everywhere, and got a sales internship at this team up in Maryland. Moved to Maryland, just up and left. I drove from Gainesville to Maryland, my car packed, and started my internship there. And it was awesome. Like, I loved the small office that was up there. I learned so much that first summer. Was really fortunate to be able to learn under pretty good people as well. And that was the summer of 2019. And so I was really lucky to get a full-time job after that, actually in marketing. And so I had kind of been in sales and marketing and really leaned more marketing during the internship, and hired full-time as a marketing manager or coordinator or something like that in August after I had graduated. And as everyone knows, in August of 2019, life was great and everything was fun. And then COVID hit going into my very first full-time role in my first season, which was crazy. And it was just this wild ride. You know, the staff was kept on until around June. And then I was one of 3 that was kept full-time. Everyone else was furloughed. And so it was myself, like our designer, and then the general manager that were all kept on staff during COVID. And at that point, like, I mean, everyone was gone, merchandise and tickets and everyone was gone. And it was kind of just like, well, someone has to pick up these pieces and someone's got to figure it out. And I was really fortunate that the GM and the ownership group over there, like, trusted me to kind of pick up all of these random pieces that were dropped during COVID. And it was awesome. It was fun. Like, I have never worked that many hours in my life or that hard in my life. But I mean, I honestly attribute that to getting me to a role like this today. Like, learning what it took to understand every piece of a business, which was pretty cool. So we go into the 2021 season. Obviously, things still aren't super great for the entertainment industry, 2021 summer. And so instead of hiring staff, the ownership decided to not hire any full-time staff, but to hire like 35 interns or some crazy number of interns that I was responsible for. And it was wild. It was crazy. It was a trip, that's for sure. There was like 35, it was probably 30 or 35 college students that all reported to me. They were all general interns. And it was like same thing, like crazy. It was fun. Like, it really let me hone in on my management skills, and understand like where I needed to work on and where I felt strong and that sort of thing. And as I'm sure you guys can imagine, after a summer like that, it was exhausting. And so I was kind of ready for another opportunity, my next step. And I actually applied out here for the Mallards for a marketing director position. They flew me out. I met the team. And at the time, they didn't have a GM. The GM had stepped down here during COVID, and they were still looking for a GM. They weren't really sure who it was going to be. They had no great leads at the time. And I didn't love the idea of coming into an organization that was looking for that leader, especially being a new employee, right? And same thing, I would up and pick up my life and come to Wisconsin with not really any sort of assurance that what if the GM doesn't like me, right? Like, there was just no way to know what that would look like. And so I was offered that position and ended up turning it down in August of 2021. And in October of 21, I got a call from my now boss, or the person taking me through the interviews, and basically said, we still don't have a GM. Everyone loved you when you came out. Like, do you want to do this job? And I was like, I think I heard you wrong. Like, I'm sorry. Can you repeat one more time? Like, I was shocked. I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, I was so confused. Just like, I was not expecting that. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, you know, I understand your concerns with like not wanting to come in without a GM. And he's like, but everyone we bring in, people are comparing them to you. We didn't even interview you for this job. And people are comparing everyone that we bring into you, and we think that you can do better than anyone we're interviewing. And I was like, done. Sounds good. What do you want from me? Like, when do I need to be there? And so I talked to a couple other people in the organization, just like reconnected on a different level, right? They were talking to me more of a marketing side, and now they were talking to me more of a management side, and kind of re-interviewed for the position essentially from a different angle. It went well, I guess. And so they offered me in early November of 2021, and I signed it, and I started December 1st of 2021 as the AGM with the intent that, assuming everything went well, that I would be promoted at the end of the season to the GM, which happened, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, there's so many things I would love to ask you about, even in just that, your experience. But to kind of stay in the frame of time, would just love to know. Yeah, I think the thing that stands out to me is one, you were in charge of 35 interns, which we all know is a wild ride for so many reasons. And the fact that your age gap would have been so minimal.
Small,
to what the norm is. So yeah, I feel like you got tossed in the deep end between COVID and interns and all the things. Amazing that you had the tenacity and resilience to continue going, for sure.
Yeah, it was a lot. And that was one of the things that was hard for me and when I was interviewing for the GM role here, that was something that they brought up a lot, was you're young, you're coming into the people who had stuck through COVID, right, were pretty well established. These are people here who have been here for 10, 15 years. My boss was the first employee of the organization. So these are people who have been around for a long time. Do you see that as a challenge? And I was like, well, yeah, that's for sure a challenge. But you also have to look at what I just did I was 21, 22. Some of these interns were even older than I was, getting their grad degrees. And so it was a trip, that's for sure. So fun memories. It was so fun. I would never want to go back on that because I learned so much that summer.
Yeah. And I'm like you mentioned, it is what has prepared you to be in the role you're in. So let's hear a little bit more about that. What is your daily duties? We have a ton of students who want to be general managers one day. And would just love to know, what that looks like for you, and maybe some of the things you really enjoy and some of the things that are pretty challenging and difficult.
Yeah. So everyone says, it's funny. Whenever I go on interviews for anyone, I always ask them what their dream job is. And everyone says the GM. And I'm like, well, do you know what that means? And they're like, well, no, but it's cool. And I was like, right. So it's funny. I do everything. So I'm super fortunate to have a really big and really good staff here. There's around 30 employees, which is full-time employees, which is really good for a team of our size and a market of our size. And I oversee everything. So I oversee merchandise, I oversee tickets, I oversee sponsorships, I oversee marketing, what else? HR, staffing, food, all the things. And so it's a lot of oversight, and it's a lot of knowing what's going on in every department. And not only what's going on in every department, but how every person is doing. And that's what I realized my job is checking in with people. Yes, the success of the business is important, but the success of the business comes from those people that manage it. And so if your food and beverage director is in the weeds, miserable, frustrated, tired, whatever, then the food and beverage department is going to look the same. And so it's really about managing the people, and the business comes along with it. And that's what I've learned in this role, is that, again, the success of the business will come if the people are happy. And that is such a big thing for us here. And you don't see a mindset like that in many minor league teams. It's work every single game. I don't really care if you're tired. No, you can't go to that wedding. And that was the experience that I had in my first organization. I missed weddings, I missed birthdays, I missed funerals, all these things that had to come with putting my job first. And here, my boss, when I was promoted, wrote into my contract that I was required to not attend 3 Mallards games, and 1 had to be on a weekend. And I was like, are you and I have this mindset for my own job, are you crazy? But that is what stems this organization, is that if I'm pissed, or if I'm mad, or if I'm frustrated, or if I'm tired, then that will trickle down to everyone else. And as annoying as it was, I did take these games off, and everyone benefited from it, because I wasn't around to fix every problem. People could problem solve on their own, and people can figure out what needed to be done in what moment. And so I oversee everything, which is really fun. The part I don't enjoy the most is the admin stuff. That's just not my my favorite thing. That's why I love this job is like, I was going to say I'm never really behind a desk, but in the winters in Wisconsin, I'm very much behind a desk, which is okay. But in the summertime and when the weather's nice, like I'm never at my computer. I'm always around the ballpark. I'm wandering around. I'm talking to people. And I could never be in a position where I just sit behind a computer and like punch numbers or a paper pusher or anything like that. I love to be active. And so that's the part I don't enjoy is the admin things. But everything else, I mean, like, it's fun. You can, like, sometimes you forget in the stress of it all, like, you're working at a baseball team. Like, it's fun. Like, this is not life or death. This is all exciting and fun, and to make a kid smile and giving them an ice cream cone because they dropped theirs, like, that's all I need, right? Like, that's the success. That's how I measure success here, which is cool.
That's really amazing. And it's kind of ironic because I teach intro to sport management. And today we're talking about management, kind of the fundamentals. And what you said about leadership is so true. And so along those lines, how would you say you've evolved as a leader? And I mean, it sounds like the evolution has had to happen in a very short time frame. Yeah, so sure. How have you done it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the organization I was at before the Mallards, there was just a different mindset. And I think that, again, it was work as hard as you can, work as many hours as you can, get it done. And that's fine if that's the way you want to run an organization, that there's nothing wrong with that, but you'll see much higher turnover at an organization like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas, again, we have employees that have been here. My boss is the president and he was the first employee here in 2001. Like, we have people that came in 2002 that are still with the organization. So there are people that have been here and made careers out of this place, which is cool because I feel like a lot of minor league baseball organizations, it's a job, not necessarily a career. And I think that's a big difference in management, is that I try to manage in a way that this can be a career for people, not just a stepping stone or a job. And I think that that's unique and a unique mindset in this industry, especially at this level, is people hop around all the time. They go from spend 2 seasons here and 2 seasons there and whatever, and kind of move around. And to be able to keep a staff and to manage a staff for the long haul is, for us, the goal. Because, like, I don't know about every other industry, but, like, it sucks to try and hire people in sports right now. Like, it's hard. Like, it's hard to find people and good people. And so if I can manage my style a little bit differently to keep someone here for next season, then I will adjust that. And it's been a big eye-opening experience because that's not what I had at my old job, but it makes so much more sense to me, and it makes more sense the way I manage, and it fits more naturally with my goals. And it's cool to be able to manage in a way that fits me as a whole. I feel like a lot of times managers are required to say, like, this is the metrics that we have to hit and this is what we need to do. And yeah, you have to do things like that sometimes, but overall it makes sense for me the way that things are done, which is cool.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, you've had a wild career so far. I'm like trying to think of the right word.
Yeah.
What's one thing you wish you had known when you just kind of started out?
That it's okay to say no, and that it's okay to take a step back and, like, look at your career and, like, not know what you want. Like, I feel like when I was offered this job here as in marketing, like, there was so much anxiety. Like, I have to take it. Like, I'm not going to get anything else, or I have to take this job because XYZ, or all these things. And, like, I don't know how this aligns with my long-term goals. And I don't even know what my long-term goal is. Like, I don't know what I want, and I don't know where I want to be. And do I want to stay at this level? Do I want to go to the MLB? Like, I had no idea at the time, like, what I wanted. I knew I liked working with people, and that was about it. Like, that was all. And I liked baseball. It was fun. And so I think it's okay to say no. And I remember when I got this offer for marketing, I called Craig Schmidt, who has been, like, a great mentor of mine, and was, like, almost in tears. I was like, I don't want to take it, but I think I have to take it. Like, I don't know what I want. and I don't know what I want to do. And he's like, it's okay to not take a job. And I was like, and I feel like it's forgotten that like you can say no, and you don't have to take every opportunity that comes in front of you. That's not to say like don't think about it, right? But like, it's not a requirement. And so I think that is a huge thing that I wish was like more told to me, that like just because you have an offer doesn't mean you have to take it, or just because you have an opportunity doesn't mean you have to take it. As well as like at the time I was like 23 or 24. Like, I don't know what I want in my life. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just this Florida girl, like in Maryland, not sure what I was doing there. Like, I don't know. Like, people always ask me like, well, did you always want to be a GM? And I was like, I mean, I guess, like, looking back, like the things that I wanted made sense. I didn't know what a title for that was going to be, but like I wanted to be in a management role. I wanted to work with people. I wanted to work in sports. So like, I guess looking back, like that was probably it. But like, I never had that. Like, I have to be a GM by the time I'm 30, by the time I'm this, like I never did. And I think that that's okay too. And that's okay to just kind of go along and see where your path goes.
Yeah. I love that. Like the permission to say no, or to reconsider, or to think about other options.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting too is I've been in the role for a few years now, and I was hired kind of right in the 2020 mix. And so there was a period where there weren't job options, and it was like, just take what you can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now we're stepping into a new season for sports in a lot of ways, where we're seeing a lot of, in some ways, the elders exiting, at least in the collegiate space, for NIL reasons and all the above, and just all the shifting in conferences. And now, but people might have more than one option when they graduate. Absolutely. And how to navigate, and like being able to go, okay, it's okay to say no to this and yes to that, or maybe I'll wait. It is difficult, I think, for students to not know what's out there. This is their first time stepping out. So I love that. And your paths can look really different, right? Like yours was, like you would have probably never guessed you'd be where you are today.
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think to understand too that like it's all going to work out in the end. And I think that so many people forget that because they get so caught up in the moment of like, well, this is the opportunity I have. And it's like, well, great. And I think the other thing too that I think is so important that I never understood until I got here was like, make sure that the culture of the organization fits with who you are. And I know that post-COVID, that has become significantly more important to people. But like when I was in school, like I didn't even hear the word culture, right? Like that just wasn't a thing back when I was in college. And so back so long ago, right? But like it has evolved so much even since I have graduated and 4 or 5 years ago, that like, make sure that you are stepping into an organization that you feel comfortable and you can talk to your bosses about whatever. And you can, like, that is so important now. It always was, I think, but it's becoming more important that, like, ask those questions. Like, what is your culture like? What do you guys do for fun? Do you guys hang out with each other? Do you like each other? Right? Like, that is such a huge thing, especially in sports. You spend so much time with these people. Like, if you don't like them, like, you're going to hate your life because you're together all the time. Like, you have to like these people. And so make sure that you ask those questions in interviews. Like, what do you guys do? Do you guys treat your employees to this, or how does that work? And I think that's become important, but I think it's not honed on enough, especially in the sports industry and especially in minor league baseball. That is something that gets forgotten really easily.
That's really helpful and good reminder. I feel like Jessica and I both tell the students that, but hear from somebody else in the role that people want. It's like, oh, the GM says like we can get that question. That's awesome. And so what are some of the best resources you've had along that have helped you along your way in your current role?
Mentors, people. Like, I cannot hone in enough or tell anyone enough to like find a mentor. And same thing, like find someone that fits with you. Not just someone because they say that they're good or they say that they're important or they have this cool title, like someone that fits with you and your goals, not only professionally, but personally. And so I have really been fortunate to have Craig Schmidt in my corner, and I've been fortunate to have all these other people who I've called and kept in touch with and, just continued to connect with over the years. And same thing, like in college, we'll never forget Dr. DeMichael's class telling you to, like, all these speakers that come in, make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn. And it's easy to connect with them now, but in 6 months, set a reminder to reconnect with them too, because just because you did it today doesn't mean they're going to remember you in 6 months. And in a year from now, when you want that job, they'll remember you 6 months from now. And so, like, staying connected is so important. And being connected, yes, but staying connected is even more important. And, like, I cannot thank these people enough. Like, these are people that I have not only personally, but professionally leaned on a lot. And so I'm fortunate to have people like that to look up to and to bounce ideas off of, or concerns or issues. And if you find that person, like, you should be comfortable telling them, like, my boss did this and it made me mad, and what should I do? You know what I mean? Like, you should feel comfortable enough to not just say, like, my life is great. Like, you should tell them your life is not. And that's what they're there for, is to walk you through steps to get better. And I think that that's the ideal mentor that you should put in place.
That's great. And you've named Dr. DeMichael, Craig Schmidt. Is there anybody else, maybe one or two other people who have helped you along your way?
I mean, there were tons of people while I was in school that were really helpful. I know the advisor group there was awesome. But people I've stayed connected with, it's really been Craig Schmidt has been, like, the number one person I've stayed connected with since I graduated. And Joe from Gator Guest Services. Him and I text all the time. He's the best. I text him random, like, pictures of things that will come up, or memories. And so I think him and Craig have been the two that I've stayed connected with post-college.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I've only ever heard good things about Craig, and I hope
great.
One day I get to meet him. And after this, I'm like, I'm going to find him on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I will do my own networking.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, it's still important no matter what stage in our careers that we're in. But kind of shifting gears a little bit, I mean, I would think starting right, or being able to intern before COVID, and then experiencing sports at the height of COVID, and then now we're all kind of, I mean, I guess it's not technically post-COVID, but we're living with this new normal.
Yeah.
How have you seen the industry change, and where do you think it's going?
I mean, the industry has changed so much, not only COVID, but, like, with the technology advances that have come as well. Like, we're talking about here doing some sort of AI something. Like, how do we get AI on our, not on our side, but, like, in our business, right? And so COVID changed so much. Again, I think culture really became a height of importance post-COVID, or during COVID. I think that people are now realizing that, and maybe this is more so just because I'm in minor leagues, right? So stadiums can be used for other things, right? Like, big stadiums are obviously used for concerts and monster trucks or whatever, right? Like, big things, but smaller stadiums can also be used for other things as well. And I think that that was probably not as utilized pre-COVID, just, again, with more so just the industry that I'm in specifically, that minor league baseball spot, that we can use our stadium for so much more than baseball, right? And so I think that that's probably something that's changed a lot. I think that culture, obviously, and I think that just technology, like, we're talking about, like, how do we make our lines at our concession stands faster, right? Something just as simple as that. And there's some AI technology thing that you can pick up a piece of food and put it on this AI scanner, and it automatically detects it. And, like, the MLB uses it, and all these places use it. But how are we able to create that in a sustainable way at a team of our level? Like, is there something we don't need something that can go for 40,000 people, right? Or we have a stadium of 7,000. So can we scale that back? What are some ideas? And technology is you have to stay on top of technology. There's new things every single day that are coming out, and advances that are happening. And to stay on top of that is kind of tiring. Like, there's so many different levels that it comes with, through marketing and through concession stands and through PA and through on field. And, like, there's so much of that, like, staying on top of it is really important to make sure that you're not behind in something like that. So I think there's lots of things changing in the industry.
Yeah. And we were actually at the Rays last semester. And so we got to experience, wouldn't you say that we got to experience the whole, like, almost the Amazon way where you like put it in there, you fold it, and it's like,
just, like, walk out.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Yeah. But it is interesting to see how much it impacts you guys. And that's just the like merchandise. Imagine all the other electronics and all the virtual reality I think that we'll start to see. And yeah, that is definitely, I feel like the next stage of what we'll see in parks and things like that for sure. And I would imagine even like keeping up with just what's going on in the world of sports is exhausting, but to be in charge of navigating all the new trends, like I feel like it's since COVID has been a rapid pace. And I think AI likely has a lot to do with that, just because there's an influx of information now that can just be constant. You're like, I don't know how people like stay with it, honestly.
It's impressive. Like half the time someone will come into my office and be like, look at this thing that's new and exciting, and we can create a logo on this website. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you can just like type in what you want and it just like appears. And they're like, yeah. And then you can do it this way. And then you tell it to make it cool. Like, there's just so many trends, especially on the AI side. Like, it's so impressive. Like, I get emails like that say like, look at this new thing, which is great, but oh my God, it is so crazy to see how fast this technology is just taking over. It's insane.
It is insane. And so when you're speaking about marketing, we'll stick kind of in that lane, and even being a general manager for sure. But, what are important things students should consider when thinking about pursuing a career in the marketing space? Only because I think GM, like I tell them, like, you got to stick to a lane too to get to the GM. You don't just start there normally. So for you, where do you see, what are some things you think are important for our students to think?
I think trends, obviously AI we've talked about, but social media is changing so much. Like TikTok has taken over the world. So like, how can you take what you're doing and make it, I tell our staff this all the time, like, can we make this TikTokable? And they always laugh at me. They're like, I don't think that's a word. And I was like, okay, well, I've created it. Like, how can you make things in short clips? Like people's attention spans are shorter than ever. And so like I think there's a study that you have like less than a second to get someone's attention. And so like, which is insane. Like, I don't know how that's a thing, but how do we do that? Like, how can we spend less than a second? Or what's that intro? Is it a song? Is it a word? Is it a picture? Like, what's that one thing to grab them? And that's all you have. Because even if that's not good, then you have nothing else. Doesn't matter what it's about or who it's about. You have that amount of time to figure it out. And so, which again, I think is very sad in the world that we live in, but that's where we are. And I'm guilty of it. I'm sure everyone is, right? But I think staying on top of social media trends is huge. Making sure that you can think outside the box. Like, we are in an organization here where we say that if we don't do at least like one or two promotions that fail, then we're not thinking outside the box enough. And I think that, again, that goes back to the culture here and the organization here, that like we can fail and that's okay. Because as long as we make it a teaching moment or a learning moment, that's the most important part. And so failing is okay. If you're not trying something new, like, then what are we doing, right? Like, this is a space that changes rapidly, and a space that can get stale pretty quickly, right? Like baseball, minor league baseball can get stale pretty quick. And so we always are bringing in new games. We're always bringing in new promotions. Last year, we did the world's largest old fashioned, which was pretty cool. And so we built this 325-gallon old fashioned, because old fashions are a thing here in Wisconsin. I didn't know that until I moved here, but, and they're made with brandy, which again, I didn't know there was another way, but so be it. So Wisconsin has like its cult things, and it's like cheese and old fashions. And so we made the world's largest, and we partnered with a winery who we used like 325 liters of brandy and like poured it into this thing, right? And it was cool. And like, we got so much media attention and so many ticket sales from it, and so much just like cool footage that like not many people can say that they were a part of something like that. And so being creative, thinking outside the box, staying on top of trends, I think on the marketing side, that's the best thing to do.
That's awesome. No, thanks so much for sharing. That's great feedback for our students for sure. And I did not know old fashions could be made with brandy either. I like an old fashioned. So that's interesting.
I know. It's like apparently just a Wisconsin thing. I don't know. It's weird, but.
And then pivoting a little bit into kind of your more personal side of things, what for you, we know like you've already kind of named, like you've worked more hours than you've ever thought you would or have ever in your life, and just the high pace and the rapid amount of information. So I'm wondering for you, what has helped you, or what things do you do to help stay healthy in a high pace, high demand, especially as a GM, right? Like everyone has demand, but like when you're the head of it, yeah, I'm really curious, what are some ways that you've done? What have you implemented in your life to help do that?
Yeah, so I am a workaholic and I'm super guilty of that, and I know that. And so there are a lot of like strict things that I've had to put into place in my life, because otherwise I would just work all the time. So I do CrossFit. I'm a CrossFitter. So I do CrossFit every day for an hour, and like that's my hour of like my phone is not with me, it's in my bag, in the locker room, wherever, right? Like it's not even near me. My watch is on do not disturb, so even if someone calls me, I don't know about it. And so like that hour a day is like my time to like be disconnected, and so no one can reach me even if they wanted to. And so I think that's a huge thing, is like I've set in that time in my life to just disconnect from everyone. I think that, again, I'm a workaholic, so it's tough, but like I've tried to really implement like an hour before I go to bed, like not using my phone or not checking my email or anything like that. When I wake up, I don't use technology. I try to just like be in the quiet and just kind of like reset sort of and get set for the day. And so I've been trying to implement more of that recently, because there is that line of like, it's getting to a point where I need to figure that out a little bit better for myself, but it's all trial and error. Like I've tried things that don't work for me. I've tried meditating and yoga and all these things, and like, that's not for me, and that's okay. And so just trying to make sure that whatever it is I want to try is sustainable, or I want to do is sustainable. That's a huge thing for me, is whatever I do, I want to make sure I can do it long term. So CrossFit and no phones, right? Those are easy things to just like stick to long term wise. And so making sure you enjoy it, because I feel like so many people are like, you have to do this, or you have to read, or you have to do these things. And like, you don't have to do anything. Like you need to do what's good for you. And like, I should probably read more, right? Like that's just a thing. I probably should, but it's not something I enjoy a lot, which is okay. And so I don't do it as much as I probably should, or I have to do things. And so, it's just one of those things that like finding whatever works for you personally, that's the most important part.
I love what you said about it being trial and error. And I think that's so extra true for the students who tend to listen to this podcast, who are just kind of entering their career. Like you're not expected to have all the answers. You're not expected to know what type of professional you're going to be. You're developing that as you go. And so I love that you mentioned that. And so for those students who are going to be graduating soon, or are already in the process of looking for their first full-time role, what qualifications do you look for when you're hiring? And as kind of the second part to that, what suggestions do you have for students who are looking to get into your industry?
I think that the first thing that I look for is experience. That is the number one thing I look for on a resume, whether it's guest services in college, whether it's an internship, whether it's volunteering in something you want to do, like it doesn't matter, but some sort of experience. And I know that Dr. Jess, you and I kind of talked about the fact that I don't have a master's degree. And I think that that is something that is same thing. Like you have to get a master's degree. Like you don't, I don't have one. And like, if you want to, and you want to continue down that path of education, like, of course, sounds like it's good for you, but I was not good in school. I was not a school person. I'm a people person, right? Like I don't like taking tests. And I think that same thing, making sure that it works for you is important. And for me, the best thing out of college was to get an internship. And I was lucky it turned into a full-time job, but resumes are important because same thing, you have that top third of your resume and you have less than a second to get someone's attention, right? Or maybe a second, whatever. And so you have 1 second to grasp someone's attention. And if all I see on a resume is school with absolutely no experience, but then I have a resume that's similar that has, maybe school, but they took an internship in this position, or maybe they don't have a master's degree, but they have 4 different internships and a volunteer and they're part of their club at school or whatever, like I'm probably talking to that person a little bit more. Because even though, yes, school is important, the number one thing is to show a potential employer that you know what you're walking into. And especially in an industry like sports where you're working long hours, it's tiring, right? You are under stress a lot, especially in the summertime here. It's fast paced. Like, I don't always know that someone that has a PhD that has no experience knows exactly what that feels like or knows exactly what that looks like. And so I personally look for experience. That's a huge thing for us here. Because the last thing you want is for someone to walk in your doors with all of this knowledge and all these really cool, important things from school, and to work a game day and be like, this is not for me, because they just don't know. And again, if that's your path, that's okay. Like, game days are not for everyone, but we want someone that has at least tried it and knows, like, yes, this is something I want to continue down.
That's, I think, so powerful for our students to hear. And I think what really stands out to me is just making sure that there's a match. Like, if it's something you're not, and I know we were talking about this before we started recording, but we kind of force students to pick a major and essentially pick a career without ever having tried it. And so I know within our department, we have a lot of requirements for volunteer and field work, and it can feel like a chore. But I think what you said is a perfect description of why we encourage students to volunteer, to get their field hours, why it's a requirement. And so I really appreciate your response there. Yeah. And then a super, super, super tough question. If our students want to connect with you, what is the best way?
Super tough. Best way for me is email or LinkedIn. So I can give you guys all my information, or to just reach out to the Mallards organization. Everyone here has my info, so they can pass it along too. But I love working with students. That's like one of my favorite things to do, is to talk to students and to help them understand that, like, you're not forced down this path, right? And I think that, and this is not in sports in general, I think this is just the world we live in right now, is that, like, everyone feels like they have to choose a lane and they have to stick with it. And, like, I was guilty of that too. Like, I was terrified to change my major. Like, all I knew was athletic training. That's all I ever thought about potentially doing one day. And, like, now college has opened up this new world of potential. And, like, if you don't like what you're doing, then you're going to be miserable. Like, people always ask me, like, why sports? You can make so much more money selling insurance. And I'm like, I would rather die than work in insurance, because, like, that is just not my personality. Like, I want to be busy. I want to be out there. I want to be talking to people. I want to be having fun. And, like, if I was selling insurance because, like, I was told to, or I should be doing something different to make more money, then, like, my life would be horrible. I would not enjoy that. Right. And so if you're not enjoying what you're doing, or, like, having a good time with it, then you're not doing the right thing. And, like, all of these experiences and volunteering things that are requirements, like, do something different every single time. Like, unless you absolutely fall in love with one thing, right? But in college, like, explore your opportunities. Like, here I am selling sponsorships sometimes, and, like, never thought I would do that. Have not a whole ton of experience doing it either, but, like, if I would have tried or ventured out a little bit more in college to try different things, whether it was sales or marketing or whatever, like, even if it's something you hate, like I said, growing up, I would never do sales in anything, but, like, here I am, so if I would have spent time in college doing something that I knew one day I was like, I never want to do this in my life, like, you're probably going to end up doing it. So just at least try something new. Even if you think you'll never use it, you probably will.
That's so true. I think especially the higher up you go in leadership, just having experience in different areas is only going to benefit, and kind of remembering that the career path isn't linear. And so sometimes you might have to kind of, I don't want to say settle, but do something that maybe you don't like as much because you know it's going to take you to that next position that you want. And so I really appreciate that. But so those are our formal questions. But what we didn't tell you is that we always end our podcast with a rapid fire Q&A.
Oh boy, okay, here we go.
I know. So if you're down, Shelly will walk you through that.
I'm down. Yep, sounds good. Here we go.
I feel like pepped up, like, all right, here we go.
All right, I'm ready.
How this works is I'll set a timer for 1 minute on my phone, and then I have a list of questions. They're pretty easy. Just answer whatever comes to you first. And if you don't want to answer and you'd just rather pass, you can just say pass, and we'll just see how many of these questions you get through and learn a little bit about you that's not so structured. So are you ready, Sam?
I'm ready. Here we go.
All right, here we go. When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a doctor.
Favorite sport to play?
Basketball.
What's the worst haircut you've ever had?
Oh my God, I donated my hair to Locks of Love when I was a kid, which was awesome, but I cut it into like a bob, and it was not for me.
Okay, name 2 daily habits.
Ooh, working out and like staff meetings probably.
Favorite zoo animal?
An elephant for sure.
What was the last book you read?
This book called The Guest List. It was like a mystery sort of thing.
First job?
Ever? I was a babysitter.
Okay. Mountains or beaches?
Beaches.
Favorite type of food?
Ooh, popcorn.
What phone app do you waste the most time on?
TikTok.
And last question, current hobby?
I think I got to stick with working out. That's pretty much all I do.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sam. That was great. You did awesome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time out of, I'm sure, your busy schedule to impart some knowledge on our students. And I mean, faculty listen, we have alumni who listen. And so just as a department and as a university, we really appreciate you and you sharing your thoughts. And so we always tell our listeners to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're at UFSPM. And we are your hosts, Jessica Francis.
And Shelly Lyle. And
Go
Gators.
Go Gators.